విదర్భ రైతుల కష్టాలు చూసి చెలించిన మానవీయ జర్నలిస్ట్ జైదీప్ హార్డికర్ కరవు కాటకాలు వ్యవసాయ సంక్షోభం రైతుల ఆత్మహత్యలతో చెలించిపోయారు. నిస్సహాయులైన అన్నదాతల ఆక్రందనలకు గొంతుకయ్యారు. తాడోబా అటవీ గ్రామాల్లో క్రూర మృగాల దాడులకు కకావికలమైన కుటుంబాల కన్నీటి గాథలను అక్షరబద్ధం చేసిన రచయిత ఆయన. జర్నలిస్ట్, పరిశోధకుడు, రచయిత, విద్యావేత్తగా బహుముఖ రూపాల్లో ప్రజలతో మమేకమయ్యారు. అనామక వ్యక్తులు ప్రభుత్వ వ్యవస్థల మధ్య సంధానకర్తగా వ్యవహరించి నేటి తరం జర్నలిస్టులకు దిక్సూచిగా నిలిచారు. ఆ కలం యోధుడి సేవలను అభినందిస్తూ జర్నలిజం విభాగంలో రామోజీ గ్రూప్ ఎక్సలెన్స్ అవార్డుతో సత్కరించింది. ఈ సందర్భంగా గ్రామీణ భారతం అభివృద్ధి చెందకపోతే దేశానికి ప్రగతి లేదని ఈటీవీ ముఖాముఖిలో జైదీప్ హార్డికర్ పేర్కొన్నారు. ఆ విశేషాలు ఇప్పుడు చూద్దాం.
Today we have with us a very special guest, an author, a researcher, an award-winning journalist, Mr. Jaideep Hardikar. Welcome, Mr. Jaideep Hardikar.
Thank you, Nisar. Very privileged. It's an honor to be here.
Mr. Hardikar is also a recipient of Ramoji Award of Excellence. Today we will have a discussion with him and understand his work. Jaideep, I was going through your work and you have extensively reported on rural India, the agrarian distress. You have even written 2 books about it. Extensively reporting on farmers during these times. What drew you towards rural India?
96, when I was passing out of my postgraduate degree in journalism, one of my faculty members, who was then the PTI bureau chief, Mr. B. Someshwar Rao, I interned with him. And in that 1 month, I think he saw something in me where he felt that there's a particular bent in my mind towards a certain kind of journalism. And so while passing out, he gifted me the book of Sainath, P. Sainath. Oh. That day, sitting in a small chai ka adda in Nagpur, I read the entire book. So that was my first really inspiration, and Rao told me that, you know, this is a journalism this is real journalism, this is something that you ought to be doing. And so I started following Sainath's work in the Hindu. A couple of years down the line, when I started reporting on, say, the issue of displacement and their rallies, their protests, I realized that purpose in journalism, if you discover your purpose, I think the rest of the things fall in place. One fine day, when Sainath was touring Nagpur for a talk, I somehow managed to catch up with him. And then things, you know, then he took me under his wings. He was reporting from Andhra Pradesh around 96, 97 when the farm suicides basically started. I was seeing the same thing in Vidarbha, which is a contiguous cotton region. I started to follow that issue and then talk to a multiple level of people, farmers, experts, economists, just to build my understanding of why this is happening. So that is how I began. But my first foray into a serious foray into kind of rural journalism was when I bagged the KK Birla Foundation for Media Fellowship.
Yes.
That 1 year I traveled across the country non-stop for 12 months. And I was astounded to see what happens to people who are displaced by development project. And if you remember, 1990s was a decade when the issue of displacement, rehabilitation was a very hotly discussed and debated subject. So that started my journey, a serious foray into this subject.
Yeah, in fact, talking about that, one of your recent works, the story on Chandrapur and the human-animal conflict there, I see that it has, you know, holistically seen or covered that issue.
Yeah, look, one of the things I am interested in, how is climate change impacting our life? If we use climate change as an overarching framework for politics, ecology, economy, then the question arises is how do you report climate change? So one of the things we decided to report it was to look at the ecological changes, which is, ecology is a physical constant. Climate is a very broad process which is very difficult to capture in terms of events. So we decided to look at people, ecology and climate change. Now ecological zones in India are multiple. There are forest zones, there are hills, there are mountains, there are oceans, grasslands, river belts. So I thought I'll start with forest. Now one of the defining stories of India today is a huge, it's a deepening problem of ecology, climate and changes, biotic pressures that are changing and are bringing wildlife in contact with human beings.
Exactly.
So my frame there is to look at how is it impacting farming, because farming itself is in the crisis. Now this is a new headache. So that's how I began with Tadoba, and eventually, gradually, I will fan out in different parts of the country. I started with Tadoba because I understand that region, but I'm also trying to study, say, central India, how does the landscape change, northern India. So while I'm reporting on this, I'm trying to research and study more and more about the north, east, west, south, because this crisis has multiple angles and multiple dimensions.
You've also written 2 books about rural India. One of them is A Village Awaits Doomsday, and it's about the personal stories of people displaced. Now, in journalism, we are told that, you have to be very objective. But when you go to such places, you have to empathize as well. So how do you balance between empathy and objectivity when you're reporting such stories?
Yeah. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm not wanting a name here or money. This story is important because the world needs to understand a daily life. Stories are important. Let's say if you are a development junkie, unless you understand the other side of development, how are you going to come to a middle ground where you say, okay, I don't want this development if it is trampling millions of people. I might take that value position.
Right.
But if I'm not telling that story, society is not always just beautiful. It has also got gray shades and dark shades. We got to tell those stories as well.
Regional journalism, I understand it's not as strong as it should be in India. How it covers, we mostly have a person from a distant corner covering, an urban life or an incident at some other place. But however much it is happening, the regional journalism, do you think it has some role, or it is shaping conversations around national policy, or especially policies which are related to rural life?
If you look at Indian media, it is pretty much, the national media today is basically the media that is in the 4 metropolitan cities and 2 other, wannabe metros. But India is such a vast country, from J&K down south up to Kanyakumari, and from east, northeast to, say, western coast. Do we read stories from Simanchal? We don't. Do we read stories from northern Karnataka or Hyderabad, Karnataka? We don't. Do we read stories from Marathwada regularly? We don't. Do we read stories from Rayalaseema? We don't. Are there reporters? Yes, there are reporters, but those are beat reporters, or the regional journalism or regions and reporting of the regions is national media, has to be a national media. We report on probably every single agro-ecological zone in the country. By choice, I stayed in Nagpur because I'm closer to the stories. If you draw 400 kilometers of periphery around me, like circumference around me, I can reach Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, I can reach up to Gujarat, Telangana. So all this region is highly underreported. It's a territory full of tribal life, full of climate issues, forest issues, agrarian distress. It's very, very diverse. I don't see India from Delhi or Bombay. I look at India from Nagpur or from the small places and then see how is India shaping up. And if you look at past 20 years of India, all the major stories are happening in the hinterland and heartlands of the country. Whether it is cricket, whether it is farm crisis, cultural, new Olympians, politics, every single major story of the country is happening in hinterland and heartlands, and we are not there. We now need a media where we have impeccably trained local people who can tell local stories in a global context. But I think our mainstream media is yet to acknowledge that and yet to come to terms with that.
So can you share an incident or an experience of yours, probably from the previous years, which profoundly impacted your perspective on rural distress?
Agrarian distress is not just economic issues. There are multiple structural spirals that kind of animate or that kind of inform the life. It's not just some nondescript individual, unnamed individual dying. His whole family, there's a historiography to a village. I'm just coming from Marathwada, where I went to a village called Kari. I thought there's only one farmer who had committed suicide. It turns out that in the last 24 months in the same village, there have been 30 suicides. Why is it driving? What is it driving? So I think I'll need to go back to that village again and again, because In the first or the second trip, people don't talk. The question is why? There was a young boy, he said, "You're the first person to come." And I said, "Why do you think your voices are not heard?" He says, no. We have a voice. It's the question is we can speak. We want to talk. Question is, are there people to listen? So I think journalism, to me, that profoundly changed me as a journalist also, that our job also is to listen.
Exactly.
I think it makes you more humble, it gets you the story, and then you tell those stories in the most empathetic fashion as much as you can, whatever your craft is like. So I'm trying to better the craft, because in today's cacophonic world of social media, my stories don't stand that much a chance to be read. So the thing is, how do you compete with a world wide web?
While you have explored themes of migration, inequality, and resilience, which one of these three do you think is feels most urgent?
They're all interlinked. Tariff war, for instance. Trump has imposed tariffs. There's a war going on between the world's most developed countries. How does it impact a small soybean farmer in Latur? So he's facing a downward spiral in prices. Prices are not going up. Then this year has been the most incessant rainfall year. He has lost his crop. So there is climate impacting him. And there is a market which is now influenced by domestic and international prices. And here is a guy sitting back who has no comprehension of both the processes. So we got to somehow explain it to both the policymakers and those who are kind of suffering the malaise of the distress.
There is an AI boom these days, and there are AI-driven agricultural practices like modified seeds, genetically modified seeds. What's your viewpoint on it?
I'll quote Professor M.S. Swaminathan, the preeminent scientist of India, who says that technology is class agnostic. It has its implications. The question is, do we use appropriate technology? I believe that AI or a new technology cannot be an answer. It's not a one-fit-all solutions or a one pill that can resolve all the issues. If the technology, AI and digital innovations in land and agriculture will lead to digital inequality. There will be farmers, just as we saw in Green Revolution, a set of farmers who were benefited by Green Revolution, but there was also a vast amount of lands which remained rain-fed and could not really, economically flourish in that period of 70s and 80s. Same thing might happen in the countryside today, where digital connectivity might lead to better information system or supply chains rather than those areas and those people who have no education in that thing. So I can see that digital divide will be a new factor in the next 2-3 years itself.
Adding to that, if I ask, how do you see rural India evolving in the next, let's say, 1 decade?
I'm seeing massive out-migration from many regions. I don't see people, particularly young people, wanting to stick to the countryside. We have to start thinking about collectively of what all is needed. There is a social malaise now, particularly in the rain-fed and smallholder farmer agriculture. Now their children are not able to marry. I see this into a major social crisis in 5 years' time. Young men unable to find brides for themselves, even from the landed upper caste backgrounds in the countryside. There are hundreds and hundreds of people who are unmarried at 35, 36. And we need more reporters, we need careful policy, we need long-term policy stability and states' involvement beyond the doles, 1500 rupees de diya, 2000 rupees de diya. It's easier it gets you political capital, but it ruins the long-term reconstruction of the countryside.
So as we conclude this conversation, what does the Ramoji Award of Excellence mean to you?
Lack of motivation or lack of, I don't know what should I have been pretty low. So this comes out of the blue. And I have no words to express my sort of deep gratitude to the jury, to the group. It means a lot. It is stamped that, okay, whatever I have been doing, somebody is tracking. That motivation or that boost or that moral support will go a very long way. So I am deeply indebted to the Ramoji Group. It is in the legacy of a person who created regional journalism.
Exactly.
That makes me all the more happy, and I am very proud of it.
Congratulations. We are also proud of having you here. Thank you for
Thank you.
speaking to us.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jaideep. Have a good
Thank you very much. Very honored to be here.
Thank you.